My wife said, I'm entitled to cheat once for every time you disappointed me. I'm at 7. I said, keep count. Then I hired the best divorce attorney in town with our savings. Her realizing she couldn't afford any lawyer was disappointment number 8. Mods. This might be long, but I promise it's worth it. I've been a lurker here for years. Never thought I'd be posting my own story, but life is full of surprises, like finding your wife's infidelity scorecard. Background. My story begins where most marriages end, with two people who stopped trying to understand each other. I, 38M, met Elaine, 37F, 12 years ago at a charity auction. I was there representing my company, which designs custom sound systems for high-end homes and businesses, a business I had founded 2 years before meeting her. She was there as the plus one of a client who, ironically, left her at our table to network with potential investors. Our connection was immediate and intense. Within 6 months, we were living together, and by the 2-year mark, we were married. Before we married, I had insisted on a prenuptial agreement to protect my fledgling business, a decision that would prove prescient years later. Elaine, who has a law degree, although she never practiced, had her own attorney review it before signing. The first 5 years were everything marriage should be. Challenging at times, but fundamentally supportive and loving. I'm not claiming I was a perfect husband. I work long hours, sometimes travel for installations, and have been known to get so absorbed in a project that I forget dinner plans. But I loved Elaine fiercely and thought she felt the same. For context, our financial situation. My business has been successful, but it's not private jet successful. We've lived comfortably in a nice suburb of Boston, with a joint savings account we both contributed to. I put in about 70% of the funds since I earned more, but we both had access. Elaine works as a marketing director for Beacon Hill Luxury Properties, a job she's excelled at and that came with social connections that helped my business. As marketing director, Elaine didn't just promote houses, she crafted lifestyles. Her specialty was creating exclusive events where potential buyers could imagine themselves as part of Boston's elite. These events, yacht parties in the harbor, private dinners with renowned chefs, VIP access to museum exhibitions, were where Boston's wealth quietly changed hands. The decline. Looking back, I can pinpoint exactly when things started to change. When Elaine was promoted to director 3 years ago. Her new position came with a significant salary bump and entry into Boston's upper social circles, charity galas, art openings, yacht parties. The kind of events where old money and new tech wealth mingle over $200 glasses of champagne. I attended some of these functions with her at first, but quickly realized I was out of my element. While I can discuss sound dynamics and acoustic design with passion, I couldn't fake interest in summer homes in the Hamptons or which private school had the best lacrosse program. More importantly, I didn't want to. Elaine, however, thrived in this environment. She began attending more events solo, explaining that it was better for networking if she could focus on clients rather than babysitting me. I didn't mind. I had my own work to focus on, and I was genuinely happy to see her excelling professionally. The problem wasn't her success. The problem was how it changed her perspective on our marriage. The discovery. 8 months ago, I came home early from what was supposed to be a 3-day installation in New York. We'd finished ahead of schedule, and I thought I'd surprise Elaine. The surprise, unfortunately, was on me. I entered our house quietly, not to catch her in anything, but because it was midnight and I assumed she'd be asleep. Instead, I heard voices from our living room. Elaine's laugh, followed by a male voice I didn't recognize. I wasn't immediately suspicious. Elaine often hosted colleagues or clients, though rarely so late. I walked toward the living room, my suitcase still in hand, when the conversation stopped me cold. "So what's your count now?" the male voice asked. Elaine's response was playful. "Including tonight? 7. But who's keeping track?" "You are, obviously," the man laughed. What was disappointment number 7 again? He forgot our anniversary, sent a text at 9 p.m. after I'd been sitting alone at Sorellina for an hour. The maitre d' felt so sorry for me, he sent over free dessert. I stood there, frozen, as they left. The anniversary. 2 months ago. I'd been buried in a major project and completely lost track of the date. I'd apologized profusely, sent flowers to her office the next day, and taken her to a makeup dinner that weekend. She'd said she forgave me. Evidently not. And what about disappointment number 6? The man asked. Christmas at his parents' house, she sighed dramatically. 5 days in rural Vermont with no cell service, and his mother asking when we're going to give her grandchildren. I felt sick. That trip had actually been pleasant from my perspective. My parents had been warm and welcoming, and Elaine had seemed to enjoy herself. We'd even talked about children ourselves during the long drive home, a conversation that had left me hopeful. I should have confronted them right then. Instead, I quietly backed away, returned to my car, and drove to a hotel. I needed time to process what I'd heard. What was this count they were discussing? It sounded like, no, that couldn't be right. I later learned that Elaine had thought I was scheduled to be in New York until the following evening. She'd even checked my flight details on our shared calendar. The early completion of the project and my surprise return wasn't something she could have anticipated. It was the one time her meticulous planning had failed her. The confrontation. I returned home the next morning, pretending I'd just arrived from New York. Elaine was in the kitchen, calmly drinking coffee and scrolling through her phone. "You're back early," she said, offering her cheek for a kiss. "How was the installation?" "Fine," I said, pouring myself coffee. "How was your night?" "Quiet," she replied without hesitation. "Just caught up on some work and went to bed early." The lie stung more than I expected. We'd been together for a decade, yet she could look me in the eye and lie without a single tell. It made me wonder how many other quiet nights had been anything but. I decided to be direct. "Who was here last night, Elaine?" Her expression flickered momentarily before settling into casual dismissal. "What are you talking about?" "I came home last night around midnight. I heard you in the living room with a man. You were discussing your count. 7, I believe." The color drained from her face, but she recovered quickly, her expression hardening into something I'd never seen before. Cold, defensive, almost contemptuous. "You were spying on me?" "I was coming home to my wife and overheard a conversation that suggested she's been unfaithful. Multiple times. Do you want to explain, or should I just call a lawyer now?" She set down her coffee cup with deliberate calm. "It's not what you think." "Then what is it? Because it sounded like you've been cheating on me and justifying it with some kind of disappointment scorecard." She stared at me for a long moment, then let out a laugh that contained no humor whatsoever. "Fine. Yes, I've been seeing other people. 7 of them, to be exact. Once for every major disappointment you've caused me in our marriage." I sat down, suddenly unsure if my legs would support me. "You're joking." "I'm not. You've consistently put me second, to your work, to your projects, to everything. The forgotten anniversary was the last straw. So instead of talking to me about it, or suggesting counseling, or even filing for divorce, you decided to, what? Create some twisted infidelity allowance system?" She shrugged, as if we were discussing something as trivial as a parking ticket. "I decided I'm entitled to some compensation for the emotional neglect. One encounter for each major disappointment. It seemed fair." "Fair," I repeated, the word tasting like ash. "And who was last night, disappointment number 7? "That was Marcus. He's a client." She didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. "Look, I never intended for you to find out. It doesn't mean anything. It's just physical." "Just physical, 7 times. It's not like I'm having an affair. These are just incidents, separate encounters. I'm not emotionally invested in any of them." "That's supposed to make me feel better? That you've been methodically sleeping with different men as some kind of, what, revenge?" "Not revenge. Rebalancing." Her tone was so reasonable, so matter-of-fact, it was surreal. "Our marriage got out of balance. You took me for granted. This is how I've coped." I stared at her, searching for any sign of the woman I'd married. "And you don't see anything wrong with this logic?" "I see it as a solution that's kept our marriage functioning. I get my needs met, I don't build resentment toward you, and we continue our life together." "Except I didn't agree to this arrangement, Elaine. That's not a marriage. That's you unilaterally deciding to cheat with a side of self-justification." "Well, now you know," she said coldly. "What are you going to do about it?" I looked at this stranger wearing my wife's face and said the only thing that came to mind: keep count. Then I walked out. The plan. I spent the day driving aimlessly, trying to process what had happened. By evening, cold clarity had replaced the initial shock. Our marriage was over. There was no coming back from this level of betrayal and the disturbing rationale behind it. But I wasn't going to be rash. Elaine had shown me exactly who she was: calculating, unapologetic, and completely self-serving. I needed to be strategic. While I maintained a calculated exterior during our interactions, there were plenty of sleepless nights and private moments of rage. I destroyed 3 punching bags at my gym over those months, and spent more evenings than I'd like to admit sitting in my car in the parking lot, unable to face going home to our increasingly toxic household. My business partner covered several meetings when I simply couldn't trust myself to remain professional. The next morning, I called in to work and explained I needed a few personal days. Then I made an appointment with Caroline Rothman, widely considered the best divorce attorney in Boston. Her reputation was ruthless but fair, and her track record impeccable. Her fee was eye-watering, but I knew it would be worth every penny. I hadn't selected Caroline randomly. Before our marriage, a mentor had advised me to know the best divorce attorney in town before you need one. I'd maintained casual professional awareness of the top family law practitioners in Boston throughout our marriage. Not out of suspicion, but as part of the same financial planning that led me to maintain life insurance and an updated will. When Elaine revealed her scorecard, I didn't have to scramble to find representation. Before touching our savings, I consulted with Caroline about the potential repercussions. As long as you're not emptying the account or using the funds frivolously, accessing joint funds for legitimate legal representation is generally acceptable, she advised. Document everything, be transparent about the withdrawal, and leave equivalent funds for her use. Courts look at intent and proportionality. I paid her retainer, $35,000, from our joint savings account that same day. A significant withdrawal, but still leaving plenty in the account. Caroline was at the absolute top tier of Boston divorce attorneys, commanding nearly double what even respected attorneys like Andrew would require up front. I wasn't trying to clean Elaine out yet, just secure the best representation possible. At Caroline's office, I laid everything out: the overheard conversation, Elaine's admission, her scorecard system, everything. Caroline listened without judgment, taking meticulous notes. Massachusetts allows both no-fault and fault-based divorce filings, Caroline explained. While I could file citing adultery as grounds, strategically, a no-fault approach gives us more control over the narrative, while still allowing us to introduce her pattern of behavior during asset negotiations. Judges have discretion in what they consider when determining equitable distribution. What kind of evidence, I asked. Text messages, emails, credit card statements showing hotel charges or gifts, anything that corroborates her admissions. I nodded. And what should I do in the meantime? We're still living together. Don't move out, she advised firmly. That can complicate property claims. Be civil but distant. Document everything. And don't discuss the divorce process with her directly. All communication about that goes through me. I followed her advice to the letter. Over the next week, Elaine and I engaged in a bizarre domestic dance, sharing space but barely interacting. She seemed to be waiting for me to either explode or capitulate. I did neither. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. The revelation. 10 days after our confrontation, Elaine finally brought up the elephant in the room. We were in the kitchen, me making a sandwich, her pouring a glass of wine. So, are we going to talk about this? She asked. It's been over a week of this. Whatever this is. What's there to discuss? I replied, not looking up from my lunch preparation. You made your position clear. You feel entitled to cheat because I've disappointed you 7 times, apparently. Don't be childish, she snapped. I'm trying to have an adult conversation about our marriage. I finally looked at her. Our marriage ended the moment you decided to create your infidelity scorecard, Elaine. You just didn't bother to inform me. So that's it? 12 years thrown away? You threw them away, 7 times by your own count. She set down her wine glass with enough force that I worried it might shatter. Fine, if that's how you want to play this, I'll call Andrew tomorrow. Andrew was her friend's husband, a corporate attorney who occasionally handled divorces for their social circle. No need, I said calmly. I've already retained counsel. She blinked, momentarily thrown. You what? I've hired an attorney, Caroline Rothman. Perhaps you've heard of her? The blood drained from Elaine's face. Everyone in Boston with any connection to the legal world knew Caroline's reputation. How could you possibly afford Caroline Rothman? The retainer came from our savings account, I replied, taking a bite of my sandwich. Without discussing it with me? That's our money. Consider it disappointment number 8. Her eyes narrowed. You had no right. I had every right. It's a joint account. I didn't even take half, just enough for the retainer. And I documented everything, including notifying you now of the withdrawal. It's all completely above board. Do you have any idea what this will do to my reputation, to my career? If this gets out, you should have considered that before creating your little scorecard. Actions have consequences, Elaine. I'll get my own attorney, she threatened. I assume you will, though you might want to check the savings account first. After my retainer to Caroline, there's about $40,000 left. Andrew's retainer is what, $15,000 to $20,000? That leaves you with enough to live on during proceedings that could take months. I watched as she mentally calculated her finances. Her personal checking account wouldn't cover a retainer for an attorney of Andrew's caliber, let alone someone who could go toe-to-toe with Caroline. She made good money, but she also spent it on designer clothes, expensive lunches, weekend trips with her colleagues. Her face showed the exact moment she realized her financial vulnerability. You planned this, she accused. No, Elaine, you created this situation. I'm simply responding appropriately. She grabbed her phone and stormed out. I finished my sandwich in peace. The fallout. Over the next few days, Elaine cycled through various strategies: rage, tears, seduction attempts, and finally negotiation. We can work this out ourselves, she insisted one evening. We don't need to involve expensive attorneys. We're both reasonable people. You justified cheating on me 7 times by creating an arbitrary disappointment system without my knowledge or consent, I replied. That doesn't strike me as reasonable. People make mistakes. I made a mistake, a series of mistakes. I'll go to therapy. We can go to counseling. The time for that was before disappointment number 1, not after number 7. Her expression hardened. You know what? Fine. I've been talking to Andrew, and he says, is Andrew representing you officially? I interrupted. She hesitated. Well, no, not yet, but then we have nothing to discuss. Any negotiations go through Caroline. Elaine explored getting a loan for legal fees, but her recent extravagant spending had already maxed out her credit cards, and banks were reluctant to extend additional credit for litigation purposes. Her wealthy friends, when approached, suddenly became uncomfortable getting involved in such a personal matter. Caroline's reputation for exhaustive discovery had them worried about being deposed regarding what they knew about Elaine's affairs. The next day, I received a call from Caroline. Your wife visited 3 top firms in Boston today, including mine, she told me. She wasn't actually trying to retain me specifically. She was attempting to create conflicts of interest with the city's top divorce attorneys to limit your options. It's a known tactic, but she waited too long. You had already secured representation with the best firms. 2 weeks later, divorce papers were delivered to our home. I'd moved into the guest bedroom by then, and we were barely speaking. I signed them immediately and returned them to Caroline. Elaine, however, delayed. Without proper legal representation, she was stalling, hoping to improve her position somehow. It didn't work. Caroline used the time to build an airtight case. She brought in a forensic accountant who meticulously separated the premarital value of my business from its growth during our marriage. Your documented 80-hour work weeks and reinvestment of personal funds creates a strong case for the business growth being attributed to your separate efforts, rather than marital contribution, she explained, especially given Massachusetts' recognition of special contribution by the primary business operator. While Massachusetts doesn't consider fault in property division per se, Elaine's infidelity pattern became relevant when she tried to claim she deserved more than 50% of our assets due to her contributions to my business success. Caroline countered with evidence that Elaine had used business events to meet affair partners, effectively using my business connections for her personal infidelity scorecard. One of her disappointments, had occurred after I couldn't attend a client dinner because I was actually meeting with her boss about a surprise promotion celebration I'd been planning for her. The dinner had apparently ended with disappointment number 4 in a hotel paid for on our joint credit card. The judge was not impressed. The resolution. In the end, the divorce proceedings lasted the better part of a year. Still faster than the average contested divorce in Massachusetts, which can drag on for 18+ months. The mandatory 120-day waiting period after filing gave Caroline ample time to build an airtight case. In the end, the prenuptial agreement I had insisted on before our marriage became the foundation of the divorce settlement. Caroline successfully defended its validity, despite Elaine's attempts to invalidate it by claiming she'd signed under duress. The judge noted that Elaine's law degree and the fact she'd had independent legal counsel review the document before signing made her claims of not understanding the implications wholly unpersuasive. The judge awarded a standard 50-50 split of assets acquired during the marriage, with the business protected by the prenup. Elaine's attempt to claim alimony was rejected after Caroline presented evidence that not only was her income substantial, within 15% of mine, but financial experts testified that her career trajectory in luxury real estate showed greater earning potential than my niche business. Additionally, our 12-year marriage fell just short of the long-term marriage threshold that might have triggered stronger alimony considerations under Massachusetts law. Her counterclaim that I had improperly dissipated marital assets by taking the retainer money was dismissed when Caroline produced bank records showing Elaine had made similar large withdrawals for business trips that coincided with hotel stays with her affair partners. The mandatory 120-day NICI period after the divorce judgment gave Elaine one final opportunity to contest the terms, but her attorney advised against it. The appeals court had recently upheld similar judgments in 3 separate cases, making her chances of success minimal while potentially exposing her to additional legal fees. The day the divorce was finalized, I waited for Elaine outside the courthouse. It was the first time we'd seen each other in weeks, as she'd moved in with a friend after the preliminary hearings went badly for her. "Congratulations," I said when she emerged. "You're free to keep your scorecard going with no constraints." She looked exhausted, the polished marketing director facade cracked to reveal something bitter underneath. "Are you happy now?" "No," I answered honestly. "I'm not happy. But I'm free from someone who thought betrayal could be justified by a point system. That's worth more than happiness right now." "You could have tried to understand," she said quietly. "Asked why I felt so disappointed in the first place. You could have talked to me instead of sleeping with 7 different people. Communication goes both ways, Elaine." She shook her head. "You always were too rigid, too black and white. Fidelity isn't a gray area for me. Apparently that makes me rigid." "For what it's worth," she said, "I did love you." "Love isn't a scoreboard," I replied. "Goodbye, Elaine." I walked away, not looking back. Aftermath. That was 6 months ago. I've since sold our house, a process that required Elaine's signature on the listing agreement as part of our settlement, though she negotiated for a slightly larger percentage of the proceeds in exchange for allowing me to manage the sale process. Thankfully, the hot Boston market met multiple offers within days of listing. I moved into a downtown loft above my new showroom, which I'd actually leased 3 months before our divorce was finalized, once it became clear which way things were heading. Business is booming. Turns out, several of Elaine's ultra-wealthy clients had hired me to design sound systems for their multiple properties. After our split, they chose to work with me directly, rather than through Elaine's firm, uncomfortable with how she had leveraged their business events for her personal affairs. These clients represented not just single projects, but ongoing relationships worth hundreds of thousands in recurring business as they acquired new properties and updated existing ones. Elaine, from what I hear through mutual acquaintances, has been telling a revised version of our split that casts her as the victim of a workaholic husband who abandoned her emotionally. Our social circle fractured predictably along gender and loyalty lines. Some of Elaine's friends maintained she was justified in seeking validation outside our marriage. A few mutual friends attempted to stay neutral, though this became increasingly difficult as details emerged. What surprised me was how many of her female colleagues quietly reached out to express support for me. Apparently, Elaine's scorecard system had been something she'd advocated to other unhappy wives in their circle, creating unease even before our divorce became public. The social consequences for Elaine were both subtle and devastating. She wasn't explicitly blacklisted, but suddenly her calls were returned a day later instead of immediately. Invitations to key charity committees, regrettably, had no openings this season. Clients requested someone with more experience with waterfront properties to handle their listings. In Boston's reserved upper circles, this polite distancing was as dramatic as a public denunciation would be elsewhere. What truly damaged her reputation in the luxury real estate world wasn't just her infidelity, but how she'd conducted it. Elaine had always carefully compartmentalized her life. In her mind, her personal choices and professional persona were entirely separate. What she failed to grasp was that in Boston's old money circles, discretion isn't just preferred, it's required. By treating client events as hunting grounds for affairs, she'd committed the one unforgivable sin in their world. She'd embarrassed them by association. After one particularly brutal day in court, where Elaine's attorney had tried to paint me as an emotionally unavailable workaholic, I sat in my car for hours, questioning everything. Had I truly been as neglectful as she claimed? Were her disappointments legitimate grievances I'd dismissed? It took months of therapy to recognize that while I wasn't perfect, her response, creating a secret scorecard system instead of communicating honestly, revealed far more about her character than my shortcomings. As for the infamous disappointment scorecard, it became something of a dark joke among our former friends. One even sent me a custom-made plaque for my new office that reads, "Disappointment number 8. Realizing actions have consequences." I keep it on my desk as a reminder. Never invest in people who keep score instead of keeping faith.